Hello, hello. Welcome back to Release Your Inner Power podcast. I have a really fun guest today. Her name is Jen. She's going to be sharing all of the things. Hi, Jen. How are you doing?
Hi, good. How are you guys doing?
Oh, we're good. We're good over here,
Yeah,
hanging in there, hanging in
nice.
there.
Nice.
So, tell me who Jen is, a little bit about you, your story, how you got here, and share some of your journey with us today.
Yeah, so how far do I want to go back here? Maybe
Mhm.
I'll start like after high school, basically. So I'm a mother of two boys. I was a young mother. I have a 16-year-old, almost 17 now. So I was 20 whenever I got pregnant, 21, just turned 21 when I had him. And that for anyone who knows what it's like to be a young mom, you basically are just growing up with your child. I was not prepared for that at all. I was by no means dependent or independent. I was very dependent on other people financially to take care of me and help with my son. I was a single parent. The person that I unfortunately chose to have a child with has never met my son. So that was really tough. And knowing that at that time I was not like financially dependent or like independent and I needed other people for support, I was kind of freaking out. And I'm just like, what am I going to do? I cannot live with my parents forever. Like,
Mhm.
bless them so much, but that just wasn't going to happen. And they were so kind, and I was very fortunate to have their support, and they were letting me and my son stay there as long as possible. I think they actually liked it. So, that was that. But I'm like, I have to do something about this. And healthcare was just something that I naturally gravitated towards because I am a pretty compassionate person and I love to help people. So I already had experience as an STNA, and at that time, like after I had my son, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? So I heard about this program about medical assisting. So I started that, and then it was like a 6-month program, and I got all into that. And then I was, I'm adding things up and I'm like, there is no way that I'm going to be able to still be financially independent with this salary. I'm making like $675 every 2 weeks. There's no way that we're going to be able to move out. So I applied for nursing school and I brought this up to my parents. I'm like, hey, I'm going to do this. And they were a little scared because financially they were just making it and they had enough to, help me out. But they're like, we can't help you on this, like schooling and helping you pay for school. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I got that covered. I just need a place for me and my son to stay. And they were like, oh, absolutely. That's totally fine. So luckily I had years of just being able to have that cushion. So I'm going to nursing school, making that happen. Sorry. And then I fell in love and I ended up having the opportunity to grow with this person, and me and my son moved in with him. And the cool thing is that he was also in nursing school too. So he had this I've known him forever. We went to high school together. We dated a little bit and then we kind of reconnected. So he, had his whole thing going on. He was in the military, and then we ended up coming back together. We had some classes together in nursing school. That's how we reconnected. And then, so we had that like bond of connecting in that way. And I had dated a couple people before him, but he was the one who, it was just such a good connection. And he was so good to my son. It was just so natural. And it was the best connection that we could have possibly had. So I'm like, this is the one, like he is the one. So we ended up moving in together, but I'm still dependent on him financially to take care of me and my son. So I'm like, here, take us as we are. Like I got
Yeah.
this baggage, take me. But he loved it. So I'm like, okay, he's the one. So we're getting through nursing school. And then I become an RN. And then I'm at this place where, okay, I can take, if anything were to happen, I know that I can move on with me and my son. Like I can take care of us together. Fortunately, I didn't have to. So I felt pretty good about that. And I got into this place where he approached me and we were having this deep conversation. And he's like, hey, if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, you're more than welcome to do that. And I was thinking about it. I was like, that sounds pretty good right now. But the thing that was sticking in the back of my head is I have some pretty strong women in my life, family wise, my aunts, my mom, all of them are very strong women and they work very hard, but financially they do struggle a little bit. They can make it happen if they have to make it happen, but they really have to grind and they do anything that they can. But to see the sacrifices that they made for themselves and their children, I'm like, oh gosh, it's empowering and it's inspiring. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to be in the position where I have to have the tears that they have and know this is a fight every day trying to make it happen. So I was like, no, I can't, because if anything were to happen to you, anything were to happen to us, I have to be able to take care of my kids. So I was like, nope, I'm going to keep going. So years later, he approaches me again and he's like, I think I'm going to go to school to be a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And I'm like, no, I'm not, because I have little kids. And that was just way beyond what I could even think of, because even trying to get through nursing school with children was so overwhelming. And it was just a lot on my plate. And the little ones, I have to do everything for them. They're so dependent at such a young age for me. So I'm like trying to do all of these things. I'm like, go for it. I love that. But I think I'm going to take a little break here. So I took a little break while he was going through school. But then I just see the potential and the growth in him. And he's so inspiring to me and so driven that I'm like, he just pushes me. And I'm thinking, okay, I could do this too. And I think that's why we vibe so much also in partnership, because we kind of feed off of each other in that way. So I'm like thinking and thinking, he's a year into it. And I'm like, I'm going to apply. So I did the same thing. And I love that connection between us because we are both in healthcare. We're on the same track. And not a lot of people have that. So I think that's so unique as a husband and wife to be able to bounce ideas off of each other and know our struggles and where we're needing the support, but also when we need to back off too. So I applied for like my master's degree for psychiatric nurse practitioner. And the whole time, I don't even know how we made it through, because both of us going through school and raising little kids, we are just going at it. We are like really trying to hold on to anything that we have. It was the most challenging time in my life. And it took me 10 years to get through that whole thing, from raising two kids and then like a marriage and trying to make it all work. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity and to have that. And I feel so blessed that now I am financially really independent, where I can do whatever I want. I'm in a relationship because I want to be here. Like if whatever was happening, I'm not here for any reason of like dependence. So I love that whole vibe that we have going on and just the support that we gave each other through that. But I think that was such a hard time in my life, and probably my kids' life too. I'll have to circle back around to them and be like, hey, how was that when mom and dad were in school together?
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, we actually have never had that conversation, but they're probably like, yeah, you guys were crazy. Oh my gosh. So I guess that's a little bit about me.
So when I'm really curious what they would say, because
Me
it's
too.
so funny, like when you're in the thick of it, right? When you're doing school and you're so go, go, go because you have all of the stuff that you need to get done for school and at home and for kids and for yourself, that sometimes it's like the days seem really long, but then the weeks are very fast. You know what I mean? It's just kind of
Yes.
like, it's definitely crazy. And I am curious, like just from a kiddo's perspective, like, because you're in the trenches, like you're doing all the stuff. And
Yeah.
so then from them, it's like, are they going to say, yeah, you guys were crazy or tired all the time or what? I'm just curious, like what from
Yeah.
kiddo's perspective, like what they would say, or if it is even as bad, like as we're making it out, right? Because sometimes we do that where we make everything seem so much worse than it actually is. And they're like, no, it's fine. And you're like, really? That's it? That's all you're going to say? All
This
right.
is that is so funny that you say that, because I naturally have just like this guilty conscience, and some things that I think people would not feel guilty about, I'm just like, I'm so guilty. I have this like deep rooted core part of me that's like that. So have had conversations with my older son about certain things that we've gone through that I'm just like thinking on a daily basis. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad about 10 years ago when this happened, and I still am holding on to it. So I've had conversations with him like, hey, do you remember this? Because I am so sorry. And he's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, you don't remember? I've been holding on to this for 10 years and you're telling me you didn't think about it at all? He's like, no, you're crazy. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I can sleep now.
Yeah, you're like, "Thanks,
Yeah.
setting myself free from that one. Whoops."
Yeah. So I guess that's a good lesson. Communicate with your kids.
Yeah,
Like, you don't have
yeah,
to hold on to things because they probably are not caring like you care.
yeah, exactly, exactly. If yeah, or they're super like mine, I also have a 17-year-old and mine is super resilient, and so some things that I will hold on to, and then I'll ask him about, he's like, "Mom, I was over that, like, 5 minutes after it happened. Like, it's
Yeah.
fine." And I'm like,
Oh
"Oh,
my gosh.
okay, thanks for the lesson, son. Thanks
I
for the lesson.
know.
So let
It's
it
so
go. Got it.
true.
Check."
Yeah. And I wonder if boys are different than girls because I have boys and I don't know what it's like to have daughters. So it'd be interesting to know if the conversation would be different, if the girls would be like, yeah, mom, I remember that. And I'm not happy with you, versus the
Yeah,
boys who just let things go a little bit easier, I think. So that would be
yeah.
interesting.
I will have to test that out in a few years because my youngest is a girl, and so she's only 7 right now, and I'm curious what she would, through the trenches of preteen and all that stuff, I'm gonna be curious
Oh
how
my
that's gonna
gosh.
go down, and then
Yeah.
just having conversations with her later and see if it is different because my 2 older ones are boys, so yeah. I'm
Oh
I'm
my
curious
gosh.
too to see
Yeah.
how it
I'm gonna have
is.
to stay connected and swing back to you. So
Yeah,
how was it?
yeah.
Tell me. Tell me.
Was it as bad as we thought?
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? I
I
know. I'm
know.
I'm I'm definitely grateful though that they're resilient because I feel like you're right. I feel
Hmm.
like sometimes conversations should be happening sooner because we'd be able
Yeah.
to let go of a lot of things that we hold on to as moms just because we care so much and we want to do
Hmm.
so much for them and protect them and show them all the things that are good that
Yeah.
we beat ourselves up more about it than we should because they're like, "No, it's good." And you're like, "Oh, okay, thanks. Thanks for sharing.
I know. It's
Thanks
so
for
true.
sharing, bud."
Yeah,
Okay, you know.
definitely.
So in that span of time, you how long were you in school? Like, because you said you did MA, right? You were an MA,
Hmm.
and then you went to
Yeah,
nursing school, and then you went back to school to get your master's. So how like, did it feel like you were just constantly in school working and, you
it
guys are
did.
building a family with kiddos?
Yeah, it really did. I made the decision when my oldest, was 6 months old to go to MA school. And that was the 6-month program, like I said. So I did that. And then I was doing that for about a year and a half before made the next decision. Like, I have got to do something else because this isn't going to cut it. So I think I was about 23 then. And then I started nursing school. And I went all the way to my associates, which took me 3 years to get through. And then I had taken probably about a year off where I was just working and getting my footing as a nurse because that alone was a lot. It
Mhm,
was a lot to take on.
mhm,
So then my husband was always a step ahead of me. He was always my pusher for sure. And so he had started his bachelor's degree and then I started it too because I had worked at the Cleveland Clinic and they had like a 5-year thing where you had to get your bachelor's degree. So I was like, there's no way out of this. I'm going to have to do this because I
yeah,
had no plans to leave.
yeah,
So I ended up making the move to do that. And it was an online course. And that took me about, I think, a year and a half, 2 years to do, probably 2 years. And when I was actually doing my associate's degree, that's when we got pregnant. Like, I got pregnant with my second son. So I did like half a semester and I took like the rest of the semester off so that I could have my son and then just
mhm,
be with him. So I had a little break during that time too. And then I think I took another year off after I got my bachelor's degree. And then I went like full force into my master's degree, but total, it had taken me like 10 years. So whatever that's going to add up to, I know it was 10 years because
Yeah.
it felt like forever. And I'm never going to get through this is how it felt. But
Oh, yeah, I'm
oh
sure.
my
Like
gosh.
trudging
Yeah.
through the mud. You're trudging through the mud and you're like, it's coming. The end is coming. I just it feels so
Yes.
far away.
Yes, and it is so hard when you and your husband are working and you're in school and you're raising little kids. There were so many times where I wanted to give up. I just did not want to keep going. And I think what was helpful for me was just to keep that why in mind. And that was such a driver for me as far as wanting to be independent. And of course, as an RN, I could have been independent financially, but just the thought of like, I want to be more than that. I want to have more money, more flexibility because I was still working nights and holidays. So I was missing out a lot with my kids and that was really really hard for me. I even had some nursing jobs where I took call and I would get when I would get called, I'd be like, "No," I'd be so mad. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to miss my son's T-ball game or whatever was going on." So I have to do something else. I cannot keep missing these big moments. So that was another driving force. I just kept the why in mind, but more than the why, it was the feeling behind it. So I think people can say, why? Like, why are you doing this so often? But if you don't know that feeling of why you're doing it, I think people can get caught up and just let it go. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, that's a great why. But they don't think about the feeling. So for me, that was big because every time it's either pain or love that makes you take action. And I was in so much pain of missing all these important events and things in my kids' lives that was what kept me going big time. Because I'm like, this is the pain, but this is how I want to feel. So that kept me pushing forward.
So I'm so glad that you said that because it leads me into what else I was gonna ask you about. Like, how else did you, um along with focusing on the feeling and reminding yourself of why you're doing it, how else did you, like, take care of yourself, like, as an
Hmm.
individual when you, are in high demand and everywhere else, right? Like,
Yeah.
in medicine is a high demand in general with, you know, energy and time and, it's even emotional depending
Hmm.
on, who you're taking care of at the time.
Yeah.
But then to be able to come home and have that, right, for your kids and your family and your husband, and then, like, how did you tend to self so you could be there for all of your people? Because
Hmm.
it's, being in medicine too, it's like you're a caregiver, but it's a different level because you're literally caregiving all the time. Like, it's not
Yeah.
just a section, it's all the time because you come home, you go back to work, you come home, it's all
Hmm.
it's all giving. So
Yeah.
how did you work with yourself? How did you, tend to self and fill yourself up and take care of you while you're doing all the things?
Yeah. I was not very good at it at first. I actually was terrible. So it did take me a while to realize how important self-care was. And when I say a while, I'm talking years. It took years. So, and sometimes it's very hard to even find the time when you're working and you're taking and someone's needing you constantly, mom. And then you have, your husband who has needs too, and you're trying to keep that spark alive and then working all the things like you're saying. So it did take me years to figure this out. And I always, since I've started my own podcast, I'm always throwing my husband under the bus. So I'm going to keep it going. But he's such a good sport about it. So we, oh my gosh, this was such a defining moment for us. So I think my kids were, I don't know, 7 and 2, and my husband got on this fitness train where he was very motivated and he's like, I'm working out, he's running, he's lifting, he's, eating healthy, he's doing all the things, but he's exercising twice a day. And I'm just in the trenches and I'm taking care of the kids. So while he's out working out, doing all the things, I'm at home because who's going to take care of the kids? Me. And he's just living his life, out exercising. So we
Yeah.
ended up getting in a fight. And it was so funny because I'm like trying to tell him, you're exercising too much. And he's like, are you telling me that me being healthy is not a good thing? And he's getting all upset. So we're going back and forth at it. So finally he understood that, okay, maybe I am taking too much time for myself, and maybe it would be a good thing for my wife if I gave her a little bit of time. So let me sacrifice some of this time and give her some time. So we were able to navigate that a little bit, where I could step away and exercise myself for 30
Yeah.
minutes to an hour, So I think that's so funny. It took us a while to figure that out. But once we did, it was a pretty sweet spot for us. So having that, but also having seeking support, because when you're in it, I think sometimes, and I know I'm guilty of this, I would expect people to kind of maybe ask, hey, what can I do to help, or reach out to me. And I found that I needed to do more the reaching out and asking for help. And we don't like to always do that. And I think nurses are, because they're natural caregivers, they have a really, really hard time to ask for help because they're the helpers. So like I said, it took some time, but I started to reach out more to people like family members or even friends. I'm like, hey, is there any way you could take my kids for a little bit so that my husband and I can go on a date, or I could have a little bit of time. And people want to help you. They really do. Most people, I'm not going to say that's for everyone because that's not true, but most people do want to help other people. So I was very fortunate with that. So asking for support and help was helpful from my husband, but also from other people around us. And then having people in the space that I was and reaching out to them and connecting to like other nurses, so that, because they understand what you're going through, and it's having those conversations with them too, whether you're venting or you're just trying to say, this is really hard, whatever we're going through. That was really helpful for me too. But I think the biggest thing for me with me time was, even if I couldn't have the help that I needed, I had to be very intentional on, this is mommy time and I'm going to take a shower. So either if dad's home, then dad has to answer all the questions. He's doing whatever, which isn't always perfect, but we did the best that we could. But it's being very intentional. Like, I just need 5 minutes and I need to walk away. So I'm either doing that in the bathroom, because that's really our space as mothers. I guess it's like the getaway space, or I'm walking outside. I'm just taking that time and I'm like, time out. I need a break. So that was really helpful too.
Those are all really amazing things. It's funny that when you say, to ask for help, and you're so right. Like it's definitely, as being a caretaker, it's definitely hard at times to be okay with asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't speak it or ask, you're never really going to know the people around you that are willing to help you without you
Yeah.
asking for it. And it's okay to ask for it, because the people around you they do care.
Yeah,
They
they
want
do.
you sane. They want you sane. They want you to have
Yes.
fun. And
Yeah.
when you start doing it, it's kind of like flexing, in a way, like flexing a muscle. Like once you start doing it, then you can do it more and more, because you realize like, oh yeah, this is me kind of like talking myself out of it versus
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
actually, being a thing.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
really that's really cool, and I love that you shared about I love that you shared about the argument, because it's funny now, like, when you look back at it, you're like, "Yeah, we were arguing about exercising
I
too
know.
much," right? Like, you're like,
I
"Yes,
know.
that was a thing," but I think it's cool that in that, like, you're like, "Oh, there was more of, like, a light shed on it to, like,
Mhm.
share the load as far as, like, getting away and doing that," and it was, like, brought for it to the forefront, so I think that's really cool that was, like, the solution, right? Like, that was the
Yeah,
solution to it,
yeah,
so that's really cool.
it was great.
Um, what are some things I always like to ask, like, what are some things that you are really passionate about, that you like in your life, that you like to be a part of or do or help with, aside from, your momhood and, all of the school and things that you've accomplished?
Mhm. Yes. So it definitely changes, and I'm in this season of my life, which really started back in the summer, where I'm trying to navigate more towards, and I'm just gravitating towards people who are entrepreneurs because it fascinates me. There is not a time in my life before the summer that I ever would have considered that instability and just not having the security of a job, that 9 to 5 or whatever. And it's not like I love my 9 to 5, but I'm so fascinated by people who take those risks. It's so inspiring. And it's my brother and my sister-in-law who opened a brick and mortar store called Bin Bargains. So I literally want to be there all the time, just seeing what they're going through. And because they have so many risks, so many sacrifices, and they're such hard workers, but it's just amazing to be around people who really have that drive to make a difference in their life and other people's lives. So in personal development too. I love anything personal development. So just listening to podcasts and other people's journeys is so inspiring. So books, all the things. I'm just so into all of that stuff right now. I'm just very passionate about learning it and also teaching it to other people too.
I love that. Yeah, I it's funny you can dive that's like a rabbit hole that you love to dive into, and it's like, "Do I wanna come out of this? I still wanna read this, and I wanna do that, and I wanna, like, meet these people and talk to them."
Mhm.
It's so fun to pick people's brains and see, like, their stories and sharing and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
I love that. I
definitely.
love that. That's great. Well, I always like to ask people to, on the show what their superpower is because I feel like as moms and women, we, have so many different, we're pulled in so many different directions and there's like so many things to us as far as like, roles of what we are. And I think it's important for women to look inside themselves and find out what, some of their strengths are and some of their superpowers are that allow them to be themselves and who they are. And so I always
Mhm.
like to ask them if they would like to reveal one of their superpowers and share what they think about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that mine is being compassionate. That just shows up in every area of my life, whether that's professionally or personally, and being empathetic. I like to say, because I'm more of a listener, I guess I should let me correct that. I'm more of a quiet person who seems to be listening, but sometimes my ADHD and dyslexia, like it gets in the way of me being a true, really good active listener. But more than listening to the words that people are saying, I can pick up on the energy and the feeling that they're feeling. And I think that helps navigate and connect with people. So even in not just my personal life, but in my professional life, I'm also going to throw myself under the bus here. I am not the best psych provider in the world, like the smartest, I should say. The best is not the correct word. I'm going to say the smartest because of all the different things that I have to go. Some people are just so naturally, they're geniuses. So that's not the thing for me. But I will say I've had so many patients during my career who have told me, you're the best psych provider that I've had. And they've had lots of them. And that always kind of takes me back a little bit. And I'm like, I barely did anything, like, what do you mean? But most people want to feel seen and they want to feel heard. And I take the time to really listen to what they're going through and put myself in their position. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. And not just, like I said, in my professional life, like I've had people say that to me in my personal life also. So I would say compassion and empathy is it for me.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I totally agree with you too. There's something about connecting and really having somebody feel seen and heard, especially like what you're doing in your professional career. It's and when they're in that space and having that, but then the feedback of them telling you that too is just
Hmm.
it's so nice to hear when you are really giving that and really understanding and being there and seeing them and hearing them and then having that feedback is really amazing. So that's really
Yeah.
cool. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Well, thank you for being on the show today and sharing your path and your journey and things that you've gone through and your superpower. It was really cool to chat with you today.
Yeah, I really appreciate just being on here and connecting and chatting with you. So thank you so much.
Yeah.